I'm Dan Smith, head advisor for undergraduates in our program, and with the help of several of my colleagues today, we have the honor of recognizing the accomplishment of some 36 students who have or soon will receive a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a doctoral degree in food science. This is a day for graduates, family and friends, and our entire FST community to savor the fruit of the hard work of these students. Mark the end of this one journey and the journey that's about to begin. So we'll acknowledge each of the graduates individually shortly, but first, I'm delighted to be able to introduce, as our graduation speaker, one of our own, Daniel Voit, 1999 FST bachelor's degree alumnus. Daniel was one of my first advisees. I have some more to say, don't get up just yet. So this is special for me. This is really bringing things full circle toward the end of my career. To be able to see one of the students that I worked with early on who's had tremendous success in his career and his life, and has been willing to come back here and give some of that back to us. So long before Canvas, long before Blackboard for some of the old timers in the room, Daniel also helped me out as a TA in a course called food processing, and he developed the first online module for an FST course, and it was a module on unit operations and green bean processing. I think that kind of dates both of us. Anyway, I can't claim that that experience ignited the interest that has fueled this wonderful career that you have experienced. But I do want to tell people a little bit about that career, and I think you'll tell them maybe where your initial interest began. Like many of the graduates in this room, Daniel's journey in the food industry began with an internship at longtime Willamette Valley Vegetable Processor in Norpac. Following graduation, he worked for several years in the industry and then returned to school and earned a Master of Science degree in food processing from the University of California, Davis. Not long after that, he found a more permanent home in the industry with food processing equipment manufacturer Blentech Corporation. And since 2007, he's been instrumental in the innovation and success of that company, and along the way, he has risen to his current position as Chief Executive Officer. Beyond Blentech, Daniel has been broadly influential in advancing both the food processing industry and food science and engineering education. He served on several leadership boards in both industry and higher education. And here at OSU, we're especially delighted that you have joined our department's industry advisory board and that you're here today to share with us some of what you've learned along the way. Daniel?
This is such an exciting day for you all. And it's a proud day for your families. No one gets this far without a lot of help. Raise your hand if you're a graduate. Raise your hand if you're graduating. All right. Turn to your families and give them a round of applause, family and friends. Never forget how much you owe them for this. Completing your degree puts you in a powerful position to create an influential and impactful career. I'm a big believer in the power of technology to improve business and lives. And the food industry is ready for growth and change. But before I get to that, I want to share a little story for you. I want to set the stage. It was a rainy day in Oregon. I know. I was walking from Sackett Hall over here to Regan, and I walked through the double doors and I turned left, headed to a small office. You might already know where I was going. Yeah, all right. I was headed to Dean Smith. The goal was to talk about my classes for, I'm pretty sure, my sophomore winter quarter. See, I was optimistic that morning that I would successfully persuade Dan about a change that I was going to recommend. Yep. So the department, and in turn, Dan said I needed to take a public speaking class to fulfill my communications requirement. But I did not want to take public speaking. You see, I had a crippling fear of public speaking, and I had done my research. It turned out the university required a communications class, but it considered interpersonal communication to be, fulfill the requirement. I was going to explain to him that this was not just acceptable, but in fact, it was a necessary change to ensure the successful trajectory of my career. My rationale: food scientists would be working in a lab. They would be working one-to-one, not on a stage talking to crowds. That's not what we do. I wanted so badly to get out of that public speaking class. Dan did not agree. I talked to him a few months ago when he invited me to do this, and told him this story, and he said it's a pretty common thing, so I thought I'd share that. Anybody here try something similar? I saw a couple nodding, so there might have been. There's one. All right. Did it work? So as I'm standing here, though, in front of you all in that very same building, it seems life is not without its lessons. And one of those lessons to me has been the role that our institutions and our mentors play in our life. They help us to grow, sometimes despite ourselves. In fact, I've spent many more hours talking in front of large groups of people about food safety and food equipment and technology considerations than I ever have in a lab. And it's through these interactions that I've had the chance to build factories and create new processes that have fed millions of people throughout the world. It's been amazing. So this brings me to two central points that I'm hoping to talk about today. And I hope you'll consider them as you move in onto the next steps of your career. The first is gratitude. It's so important to appreciate the managers and mentors that challenge you. We grow as a response to stress, not by avoiding the things that scare us. Is it coming up over there? All right, super. Number two, food is fundamental to life. Our knowledge as food scientists makes food safer, more affordable, and better. And in doing so, it makes the world a better place. So I'd like to share a couple of stories about OSU, food science, and a few other mentors that I've had along the way. I personally feel a tremendous amount of gratitude for the honor of being here today, and I feel a tremendous amount of gratitude to this department in particular. Oregon State played a central role, not only in my life, but in the lives of my father, my uncle, my grandfather, and my grandmother. I met my wife here, and my daughters joined me here today. And who knows, maybe she'll walk a similar path. Not yet. I've felt drawn to food for as long as I can remember, and that probably runs in my family. My father grew up on a farm. My grandfather owned an apricot farm, and my father had a massive garden in our backyard where he grew most of the family's vegetables. And in the 1980s, my mom collaborated on a cookbook where I tasted my first glimpse of stardom through food. Can you put the second slide up? There it is. I know. This is me in a starring role in a rare cookbook learning about the subtle art of vegetable processing, which I think I later carried on to the green bean processing unit operation, where I did my foundational work. This is as close as I would ever get to food fame, but I was pretty proud of it. But all joking aside, my family taught me to appreciate food. My grandfather, Fred Voit, was one of the first graduates of this program in the 1930s, and he worked for Charles Wiegand personally. Growing up, I spent summers with him in Guatemala, where he lived in the 1980s, learning about food processing methods and technologies. And I could go on and on about those times for an hour, but I think this next picture sums it up real well. It's a picture of me in front of a dairy in Guatemala City called La Pradera. Fred would take me on these site visits, and he'd always let me look through the freezer and carry as much ice cream as I wanted. Yeah, I held a lot, you can see there. I'll stay on that one for a second. You can see my brother in the picture. He's the one right next to me. He is not holding as much ice cream. And so it was readily apparent which one of us would go into wine and which one would go into food. But my grandpa Fred, he would take me into jam and jelly factories as well as frozen vegetable factories. He'd say, "Danny, you want to learn how to make jam? Danny, you want to learn how to freeze broccoli?" And Fred taught me that food science is needed all over the world. Has anyone else here had a family member or mentor that inspired them about food? I think so. So next slide. This one's blank on purpose. I'll explain that in a second. During my time at OSU, I had the opportunity to work in the pilot plant right down there. It was mostly mopping and fixing, but I learned about machines and activities in the pilot plant. And you'll notice that I don't have a photo of myself during that era. And given the fashion choices that I made during that point in my life, I'm extremely glad because it gives me some semblance of credibility, I hope, as I stand here. But all joking aside from the world-class education that I received here, OSU taught me about the importance of combining learning with physical activity, actually bringing it into the pilot plant and doing things with it. It was spectacular. And I'm betting many, if not most of you, worked in the department during your time here. I see a show of hands of how many of you actually worked in the department, Voit, something. Most of you, right? Remember the gift these experiences gave you in the years ahead. In graduate school at UC Davis, I had the opportunity to work under Dr. Paul Singh. Many of you may have used his textbook. If you haven't, you will at some point. Graduate school was the hardest I worked in my life up until that point. Food engineering in my undergraduate was not my strongest class. There's a whole story I could tell about that, but I'm going to pass on that for a second. But pursuing it as a master's degree was challenging in so many ways. Next slide. Yeah. My research was on a NASA grant to develop fruit and vegetable processing systems for a manned mission to Mars. I've written a few papers and talks on the subject, so if something you're interested in, go give them a look. But what I really wanted to talk about was Dr. Singh. And as a mentor, he showed me that I was capable of doing much bigger things than I ever thought was possible. After graduation from school and working a few jobs, I found myself at the company I currently manage, Blentech. The founder and chairman, also an Oregon State graduate, gave me some of the best opportunities a young professional could ask for. Shortly after starting for the company, he assigned me the demonstrations and startup and commissioning of the prototypes he built. Those are big words for saying that I would be doing technical issue resolution on prototype machines in front of customers globally. So I got to solve a lot of big problems in a lot of faraway places. And he always told me, Dan, trouble is just opportunity and work clothes. And so I share this with you as you begin your careers or the next steps, so that you know that there is opportunity in every crisis, because you will certainly face crisis and you will certainly be better for it. These days, I manage that company, and our team specializes in manufacturing and automating cooking and equipment blenders. I continue to find leaders and mentors that challenge and inspire me every day. And this is a picture. The next one is well, actually, that was before. That was when I was doing the prototype work. But there you go. This next one is a picture of my team a few years ago after winning an award for our cloud-based analytics and AI platform called Artis. Great team. I hope you also seek out people in your lives who will push you outside your comfort zone. And if you do, you will find that you can have a huge impact on the business and on the world. So my second central thought is that technology is growing and changing at a profound pace. Some people call it the fourth industrial revolution. The emergence of AI, cloud technology, and many other innovations are making the impossible possible, even in food. As new graduates, you are perfectly positioned to be an integral part of this revolution. The team I lead also gets to be a part of that revolution. We design new processing lines for cooking and cooling foods, such as soups and sauces, dips, fillings, and other prominent things like fast food tacos and school lunches. The lines we've designed are highly automated and require a combination of skills: understanding computers and networking, understanding food processing methods, understanding food safety, understanding food chemistry and composition, but it even includes things like human psychology. And it's through the wide-ranging exposure that food science and food engineering has given me along the way, along with our amazing cross-functional capabilities in those automation, computers, engineering, metalworking, that allows us to accomplish some pretty big stuff. We developed fast food taco lines that radically reduce waste and keep costs low, fighting inflation. And these lines service tens of thousands of restaurants around the world. We've developed no excess water rice cooking systems that saved energy and increased yields. We've developed school lunch systems that improved food safety and allowed huge increases in production. Just recently, one customer told us that one of the lines we built had produced more than 500 million pounds of school lunches like macaroni and cheese. So something like 1 billion meals. That's just one line. Amazing. And a few years ago, I worked with a representative from a prominent Middle Eastern country's government. We worked together on concepts to produce meals at scale. And they knew that access to food was an important part of curbing the rise of things like extremist terrorism. Access to food helps stabilize societies. And this helps you to understand how big of an impact food can have on the world. Recently, my focus has shifted to the opportunity created through combining digital technologies and food science. And I've written some articles about that in Food Technology magazine, but my focus is primarily on the creation of software tools. Whether you specialize in food science, fermentation, winemaking, have an interest in toxicology or micro, the number of opportunities created for you are endless. And from my vantage point, you're entering the next phase of your career in one of the best times in history. Digital transformation, modernization, now AI are redefining what is possible in an industry that has a big responsibility to feed the world while sustaining a healthy planet. I hope you also challenge yourself and seek opportunities to create meaningful change in our important industry. I wish you all the best in your careers and congratulations.